Just like they were trying to pass more gun bans in '99, and then magically Columbine happens in April, 1 week before the votes. We're talking miles from where this happened. You've got all the other issues. The guy's always wearing a mask, whether it's these staged events the Russian government's been caught doing to bring in police state shootings. You have somebody drugged up, your people do the shooting, then they disappear, then they grab the patsy. The patsy's drugged out of their mind. Or sometimes, just like the underwear bomber was gotten on the plane by the State Department, that's C-SPAN. That's the Undersecretary of State admitting an unnamed agency told us give him a visa, even though he didn't have a passport, get him on the plane. We had a witness, day one, Kurt Haskell, the lawyer, who saw this happen. And then a month after he told us here on the air and broke that, it got confirmed. Underwear bomber, gotten on the plane by British intelligence. Head of the 7/7 bombing, a SWAT. On record, MI6, London Telegraph, Fox News. Anwar al-Awlaki, number 3 in Al-Qaeda, hanging out secretly at the Pentagon, Fox News, AP, Reuters. My point is that I worked with Watson right before we went live on air. We're doing another article right now breaking down the 10 points that directly link this to false flag. Because there's at least 10 of them. And this is where the shadow government is based, is in and around Denver. They control the police there. Harrison Klebold of Columbine reportedly got 127 bombs. That's CBS News. Look it up. Into the building that day, the school was half empty. The police stood down. The police didn't respond for hours. People reported up to 4 different shooters. They wouldn't release the tape for over a year and only released selected clips, and then they were wearing masks. They'd shot a video of attacking the school months before that was school-sponsored. Their parents were both in high-level black ops. They were both on serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It all had the same M.O. of a black op, of a staged event. Now remember, Sirhan, the LAPD and the coroner said didn't shoot RFK, and it did come out who shot him with his security detail, who was known CIA, who'd been assigned to the detail that day, behind him with a different caliber. The audio acoustics, all of it, the witnesses. Sirhan was given an amnesic. They give you an amnesic, just like Baroness Vanderloob, who supposedly firebombed the Reichstag February 27, 1933, to bring in martial law in Germany. He was found naked and drugged and didn't know if he'd set fire to the building, like he was going to run around the Capitol building and set more than 14 fires in it, and Hermann Goering, though, don't worry, caught him and stopped him. The big hero, who later came out and declassified documents, was the one behind it. They just finally released the investigations that happened during Nuremberg. Those have been classified, but a lot of authors and researchers already knew. A few years ago, they released those. The point is, Hitler started World War II with Poland. Mainline textbooks just say, oh, he just attacked Poland. No, actually, he attacked military bases along the border, his own military bases, dressed up prisoners as Polish troops and as German troops, shot them up, and then shot newsreel footage and said Poland had attacked Germany with their World War I, pre-World War I military. It was horse-drawn carriages and guys with swords. Yeah, right. The most powerful military in the world at that time was German military, built in secret, pretty much. Secret rearmament. Rolled out, taking Danzig and other areas that had been taken by France at the end of World War I, and then they go into Poland and split it up with Uncle Joe Stalin. All done by a fake news story and shooting a few real people and then saying that they had attacked. Okay, that's how this is done. But so you can have a good patsy, like what you had with Giffords and Judge Roll, who were investigating, we've now confirmed, Fast and Furious. They were going to come out bipartisan together. They've got to be dealt with. Out comes a guy who was admittedly taking hallucinogens every day for years, hanging out with weird people, and had disappeared and told people he was under mind control. He shows up and shoots 2 people. They try to link him to the Tea Party. Then it turns out he was a out of his mind person who was a Democrat. But that's, again, ladies and gentlemen, we're now being told by ABC and others, oh, he could be a Democrat, or no, he's Tea Party. And within hours, we predicted this. Paul Watson wrote an article this morning that's linked up on the right-hand side of drudgereport.com right now. Dark night shooting to be exploited for political grist. And then, over the next few hours, AP, Reuters, CNN, Bloomberg, all of them coming out saying Obama and Romney both need to call to restrict guns. And by the way, Romney has supported that in the past. Now he says he doesn't, but now they're saying maybe this will give them the political courage to restrict people's Second Amendment. There's our article to be exploited for political grist under it. ABC News. Right underneath that, already linking Tea Party, but backtracks now. Turns out he's a Democrat. Breitbart, shooter may be registered Democrat. CNN, Piers Morgan calls for gun control. Bloomberg, what are Obama, Romney going to do about guns? Not about a totally sick society that we see. And by the way, the London Telegraph got it right. They had a 12-month-old baby in there. They had little kids in there, 6-year-olds in there, 4-year-olds in there. A 12-year-old got shot and killed. The shooter reportedly shot a baby at point-blank range. All of this right before the treaty that's stalling in the Senate. Obama's about to sign it, and now he gets to be the hero. And by the way, don't worry. Don't worry. If a guy dressed up like Bane shows up and does all this, shooting imitates scene from 1986 Batman comic book, where a guy in a mask like Bane shows up and shoots a bunch of people at a movie theater, and then they blame Batman. Oh, and see, the movie's now being blamed. Obama leads prayer moment of silence. Supporters chant 4 more years. Yes, this is the false flag rollout, and if you don't believe it, I got a bridge I'm ready to sell you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a 9.5-minute video up at Infowars.com where I predicted Obama would do something like this. It's incredible. Charlie Daniels joins us right now. Normally we'd be talking about the new film that he narrates that is now available at Infowars.com, InfoWarsShop.com, that Chuck Undersea made with Charlie Daniels, country music legend. Behold a Pale Horse, and it gets into UN Agenda 21 and all this, but I tell you, out of the gates, even Rush Limbaugh has said before, every time they want to pass a gun control bill, 2 weeks before they wanted to pass an assault weapons ban again, we had the Columbine event that was really shady. Charlie Daniels, and we're going to skip this break, folks. Charlie Daniels joining us. Charlie, what is your initial take on the tragedy and now people seizing on it like Bloomberg and others saying ban our guns so we'll be helpless when crazy men who think they're cartoon characters dress up and shoot people?
Well, yeah, the whole thing is, as you well know, is that people, I'm 75 years old. I got my first gun when I was 12 years old. I have owned guns all of my life. All the people I know have owned guns. My family owns guns. My wife owns guns. My neighbors owns guns. None of us have ever done anything, even pointed one at anybody. The people that do it are the problem, not the guns. The gun, you want to do gun control, start with the Department of Justice.
Well, look at the guy who shot the Congresswoman and others. He was a big Democrat who dressed up like women, and then we got the blame for that. And now this guy they're saying is a Democrat. What is up with these Democrats going around shooting people?
Well, I don't know. I can't figure out what difference it makes if the guy's Democrat or Republican. He's a damn nut.
I agree.
That's the bottom line of the thing. He probably had no business on the street. He had no business with a gun. The thing is, my gosh, man, this is just so downright stupid. What are you going to do then? You're going to ban butcher knives? I mean, you know, the people that are violent are going to be violent. These people that have these guns are not supposed to have them now.
For more than 6 years, I've talked on the air about creating a social network. PlanetInfoWars.com.
That was the Alex Jones program. I'm adding that in today. And I'm going to also add in the Dr. Deagle Nutrimedical. But that was Prison Planet TV from July 20th, 2012.
Corroborated by a fourth source, a former intelligence officer with the Reagan administration. So we have four separate sources who don't know each other, all either verifying or saying the same thing. And that gives it a lot of veracity, that gives it a lot of strength.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing is, it's interesting the dates you're talking about, because it's interesting that on Sunday, August 19th, starts the Jewish calendar, the dates of awe, which, of course, the dates of the destruction of the temple, the scattering of the Jews and the ancient Hebrews, these are the dates when all the most horrifying things happened to the state of Israel.
Right.
Interesting.
It is. It is.
Yeah, very interesting.
So, well, this is dangerous ground for any talk show host or investigative reporter, Dr. Bill, giving out dates. I feel a responsibility on one hand to give out the dates, and I caution people to review this information and to take what might be called prudent preparation. And don't throw the kids in a minivan and head for the mountains, but evaluate this stuff, make your own decision, and do what you think is best for your family.
Well, let's put it this way. I think that people should have an escape plan and be able to make sure that the radio is on, or the computer's on, or the alert systems are ready, so that because remember, Homeland Security will notify that there's a problem. But if let's say the El Hierro Island goes off at 2 a.m., let's say Eastern Standard Time, you have roughly 8 hours before that 800-foot high wall of water at the speed of a jumbo jet strikes North America. They've been following the El Hierro for a number of years, and there's actually an entire new volcanic island appearing there. The amount of activity is increasing dramatically. All they need is enough steam in the steam venting behind that rock face, and it slides and it's done.
That's right.
I've already got information.
That's one of the things I didn't mention. All these reports are East Coast connected, which means it may not necessarily be a pole shift, which would affect all coastal areas worldwide. It may just be El Hierro and the Canary Islands, which would affect the east coast of North America.
Now, one thing that people should be aware of is that pole shifts are basically a disjunction of the lithosphere, the crust, with the mantle of the Earth. Now, there's a number of converging cycles here. We have the 360-year cycle that causes the mini ice ages, which is the alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. We have the 10,500-year ice age cycle. We have the 105,000-year grand ice age cycle, and we have the 62-million-year cycle where we literally pop through the galactic plane, and we have a major flip of the magnetic field of the Earth. Now, there are major transitions of the magnetic field every 600,000 to 700,000 years. There's minor ones that occur via 10,500 years, where there's a precipitation of iridium that comes down on the Earth along with buckyball carbon from interstellar space, because the Van Allen radiation belt in the magnetosphere collapses. That happens on a regular cycle. There's collapse of a number of species that occur, but we're at the convergence of all these cycles, plus the return of this destroyer called Nibiru, the Heraclitus, they call it the Passover star, is what I refer to it. That is coming in. This is not like conjecture. I don't know the exact dates. These are the first I've heard of it. There's two possibilities. Is number one, that the government or the powers that be have decided they're going to release this through so many sources that independently a number of talk show hosts will pick up the information and run with it, because they want to kind of test the waters, if you want to call it, test the response of the public. The number two is that this is real. So what we need is corroboration. What I can say is I've had from my independent sources, because we have the show out and everybody contacts me with information all over the world, that a Brazilian astronomer has come forward apparently in Brazil, to the consternation of many of his colleagues worldwide, and stated that this object, this dwarf star, is approaching from the southern ecliptic. And of course you can see it since last year in Antarctica very easily, in South America, in Brazil, in Chile, in the Arecibo telescope, etc. And of course with the infrared telescopes and the X-ray telescopes like IRAS and the others, they've been identifying it for years. In fact, so this is not something we're bringing by conjecture. This is the first, though, that we call date windows. If it's a false date window, it may mean that they want to test the grounds for a date window which is later, maybe in the next couple of years. But if it is really happening, the danger is that we're going to have major earthquakes and volcanoes that can cause effects on the Earth. For example, most people realize that the most dangerous thing about volcanoes is glass, because the glass can melt inside jet engines And you can't fly conventional planes or regular planes through glass, and regular radar can't see glass clouds. Now, the Doppler type of advanced space-based radar that's classified, yes, they can. But the regular radar can't see these glass clouds, so you have to shut down all air transport if that happens.
Right. Well, Dr. Bill, the more I think about this, if we're we're in the second week of August and not much is going on, maybe halfway through the second week of August, I'd say it's probably not going to be a big zero. That's just my estimate at the moment.
Your guess is that it's going to be a zero, is what you're thinking, right?
If we get to into the second week of August and not much is going on, I'd say yes, because I think we'll see a dramatic increase in earthquakes and volcanoes the week before this passage.
Yeah, I think so. What you're going to have is what's called a gravity wave. And what a gravity wave is, it's a curved space-time that then hits the tectonic plates and rings the Earth like a bell, releasing energy that's stored up in the rocks. So you should start seeing what we call superquakes. And interestingly, the Japanese magnetic satellite can see that from space. So the South Pole magnetically disappeared before the Santiago, Chile earthquake. The actual South Pole magnetically from space looking down was gone. So something's afoot. Either it's a massive disinformation project, or if it's real, things are going to start rocking and rolling, and we're not just going to have a October surprise. Maybe we'll have a September, August surprise.
That's right.
So Harvey, keep your skepticals on, but start getting prepared. If you're not prepared now, it's better to be prepared a year early than a day late.
Absolutely.
Back in a moment with John Moore and Morrison, and at the bottom of the hour, next hour, we'll be joined by Robert Felix, talking about these other information. We're going to discuss this some more when we come back with John in just a moment. What to do to prepare.
This is the Dr. Deagle Nutrimedical report for Friday, July 20th, 2012. And I will be putting this up, and in between the breaks, just go ahead, listen to this, because it is only a radio program. You don't need to stare at the screen, and get what you need done around the house. And when they're back up, I will I'll put it back up after the commercial. I can't run the commercials. So enjoy the show. Hopefully it's coming out alright. And I'll just keep checking for when the program comes back. I'm not going to try to edit out things and all that, because I think the quality will be better if I don't. Alrighty then. Don't just stare at the computer screen. Go ahead and do what you need to do, and I'll put it back up when they're back on. Immune system support. So hang in there. We're waiting. There's no new news for me to report on so far, so unless I upload this and then edit this out, I could do that and then re-upload again. I could do that. I just hate to miss any of the show. Here we go.
Welcome back, and while we're on the break, I did a little research and found it was a artist from Arecibo in South America that in fact did all this research. His name is Rodney Gomes, an astronomer at the National Observatory in Brazil, and he has quite a bit of information. I posted the actual article here from National Geographic News, so this is not like off in the La La Land. We're talking about more and more attention by the government. That's why they put up these IRAS telescopes, the they call SOFIA, which is the infrared telescope on the top of a Boeing 767 about 3 years ago. That's why all the other research, including the X-ray telescopes that are up in space, all looking for this object that can only be seen from an infrared and or X-ray signature. You can't see a regular light signature to identify it. So interesting. John, tell us more about what you're doing there.
Right, there's a very limited time frame when you can see in the visible light spectrum. As far as my personal preparations, I'm filling in some of the gaps. Having my wife go into town and pick up a quarter ton of salt this coming week. Salt is probably the ideal thing to keep if you're in the middle of the country. Human beings cannot live without salt. It's very cheap to get right now. Freezing won't hurt, heat won't hurt. If it gets moist and gets solid, you just bust it up again. Insects won't bother it. The Romans used to pay their soldiers with salt. In fact, we still have an expression in daily use. He's worth his salt. So it's one of the ideal things to have. I'll be stocking up on a lot of salt. Making sure I checked out my water filter supply, picked up another water filter. Just kind of filling in the gaps, Dr. Bill, and making sure that all the preps are squared away and everything's ready to go.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And of course, you've gone over that list. I'm going to do another update this weekend on it. By the way, if you have a chance, or any of our team, Ann or John, you can put up video reports on live stream, our live stream channel with some pictures if you want off your screen. Where anytime you want to grab those and put them up on your own YouTube channel, by all means do it. We have our expanding team of we call investigative reporters now using our live stream channel to post up reports. Anybody that's been a customer now of Nutrimedical in the last 6 months has access to the live stream channel. And we're going to put up clips from that on our YouTube channel, but it's really important that people realize we're going to do these on the fly. So if any emergent news comes forward on any major issue, it'll be up on live stream very quickly. Of course, also on Nutrimedical and on Clay and Iron, depending on which is appropriate. Yeah, so this is very real. I think that there's a number of other websites that posted up. I like to go back to the original, which is the news report right there on
original source material.
Original source material. When I pull it up and it's up on National Geographic News, that's much more significant. That's pretty significant.
Well, National Geographic is about as mainstream can get.
Yeah, yeah. Now, John, let's talk about everything else that's going on. We have this young man that committed this crime in Aurora, and you're a forensic investigator. I mentioned in the first hour having taken care of the first kid shot in Columbine, worked with the military for years, seen violent crimes on the medical side, worked in emergency and trauma units. I put dollars to donuts, 90% chance that this individual had previous examples of psychopathy that were identified by relatives, teachers, and they were most likely on one or more psychotic or antidepressant medications like Celexa, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and that these actually de-repress activity. So we see vets that come back from the Gulf, they're actually a lot of time while they're doing operations in Iraq or Afghanistan, on serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and what they do is periodically they cause seizure-like activity of the limbic system, and they de-repress activities that normally their own revulsion would say, no, you don't kill your wife and kids. This is not the right thing to do, even if you're angry.
Right.
But the drugs literally take away that inhibition.
The built-in mechanisms that we have in our brains to not harm another human being is one of the strongest mechanisms that there is, and I know you can verify that, Dr. Bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very difficult for the military to overcome that mechanism, to get young men to aim a weapon at another human being and squeeze the trigger. It's a very difficult thing to do. But these powerful psychotic drugs, psychoactive drugs, they in fact can do that. They can reduce and in fact eliminate these inhibitions, and that's very likely what's going on here.
Now, a lot of people think, for example, the work at Tavistock Institute and the work at the Menninger Institute in Topeka, Kansas, at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and at University of California and Stanford, and other facilities such as University of California, Irvine, where they're doing mind-control experiments for the U.S. government and DARPA for decades, many decades, that they, quote, didn't succeed. I beg to differ. They've been able to succeed through mind control, to split personalities, to create alters, to implant, to use a combination of drugs and pulsed electromagnetic field or other technologies, including research. Even most people aren't aware that Timothy Leary, working at LSD, was actually trying to work with projects to create, if you want to call it, Manchurian candidates. Their idea was experimenting with LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide, and other things such as magic mushrooms or other drugs they were trying to do. They even had a drug that was being used as a longer acting form than LSD that would literally last a month, and they actually sprayed it over a naval ship and had some major effects back during the Vietnam War. You're probably aware of that project too.
Well, I'm aware of many of these projects, and what they did was absolutely barbaric, illegal, violating U.S. law, international law, all the things that came out of the Nuremberg trials, just absolutely horrific things that these men and women were engaged in for those decades.
Yeah, and also any decency too. So what people need to understand is these things really did happen. They're not like a conspiracy theory. One of the things I find that repeatedly comes up is that people think somehow, whether it's John Moore, Deagle, or Ann, or whatever, we, quote, write ourselves in like, into this history. Almost like, they call it the Forrest Gump syndrome. And the thing is, here's how things work. Number one, if you're willing to step forward, God's going to use you. Number two, if you step forward and start asking questions, you're going to find this stuff pretty easy. You don't need to search for hours. You can go on your computer for 2 hours if you don't believe anything we say, and you may not get there. It might take you 6 months or a year or 2 months. It might take you 2 weeks, but you're going to eventually reach the point where if you continue asking questions, your skepticism will dissolve away. It's like a wax finish on a car when you take a hot torch over it. It's going to melt away. So your skepticism,
Well, people need to exercise their discretion when they're doing these things, and look for verifiable sources where names are named and places and dates are given, and that's the kind of things you look for. I stand behind my sources. I have to keep them private, or they would be in harm's way. So I have no choice but to keep them private and to keep them confidential. But I'm a real person. My name and phone number is right there on my website, so you can verify it with me.
Right. Now, let's look at the converging timeline here, John, and the preparedness. In fact, maybe worthwhile, because we have a little longer show and you'll be here a few more minutes, to kind of go over what we are talking about in terms of preparedness. What people should realize is that this is a list that's always being in revision, but the core things are still there. For example, when people want to know, what have I done? Okay, well, number one, what has Dr. Deagle done? Well, I have food, air, water, I've got everything lined up. I have personal protection. I've got a backup power source with a 20 kilowatt generator. We're negotiating with a company out of Colorado that provides lithium pyrophosphate batteries, power controller, so you can run solar, wind, or whatever, and so you don't have to run your generator continuously. So last week when our power went out for about 4 or 5 hours, we had 2 seconds when it went out, it kicked back in immediately. Soon with a power controller, we can run on battery, solar, wind. You have to realize that the power grid is almost certainly the first thing that's going to go down in a civilization. In fact, I was told this by the FEMA director when I worked in the late 90s with Reserve Admiral John Hughes on Operation Top Off and Dark Winter, the very first thing, and I had access to the classified FEMA response documents. The very first thing that the government's going to do, in the case of anything, a biological weapons release, a radiological weapon, a dirty bomb, just medical waste bomb, they're going to shut off the power grid and create a perimeter. That's the very first 2 things they're going to do, isn't it, John?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
In other words, even if it doesn't shut off because of the CMA, the very first thing the government's going to do, so you can't drive or go anywhere, is they're going to shut off the grid and create a perimeter, and they're going to do a dual perimeter. The first one will be a ring perimeter around all the major freeways, and then a perimeter around the city further out.
That's right.
People need to be ready, and a lot of time these external perimeters many miles out are all going to be foreign troops manning them, not our regular troops. And they're training them now to be in America if they need them.
Well, there's our commercial break. And let me see if I can find anything else on here to report on. While we're waiting on Dr. Deagle to come back again, the Nutrimedical report from Friday, July 20th. Earth changes. No, I don't see any new news yet. Let me see. Let's try another avenue. I'm checking for you. Just let it roll. We'll go back into the Nutrimedical report in a few minutes while his commercials are rolling. I'm going to see if I can find something on YouTube, but I cannot. Let's see. Nothing but blank screens. Alrighty. It won't let me go into anything else right now.
Two, 3.
Nope. Still on commercial break. Oh, come on. Look at this. Well, at least you can get some stuff done while you're listening. Maybe I'll try to edit this out and join it together. Let's see. But that'll ruin the quality of it. I'd rather just keep this rolling. It's probably going to be almost an hour show since I can't get rid of the
86.
The commercials. Yeah, good going. So, maybe I can go in a different way. Might have to use a different browser. I can't seem to open any other windows. And I don't want to lose this for you guys. Let's see. Oh, here it goes. I guess they monitor this and now they let me in. Nope, still a commercial. Let's go into the watchers.
GCN Great Talk Radio starts
We're
here.
back.
Let's go through some of this preparedness list, and then we're going to expand it in a moment here. We're also going to be joined shortly by Robert Felix talking about some of the other things. Want to kind of get into the preparedness list here. Firstly, we have Robert. Are you there too?
I'm sure here.
Good. Okay, let's run through the list here, and we're going to get we'll be pretty quick because I'm going to update it, but we call it the 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus list. It started off being 10. And you started this, I think, some years ago, John, we were on the program. The first thing I tell people to do, and you don't have to listen in front of me, but I'll run through it quickly. The first thing you need 2 high-quality water filtration systems. And the one that we recommend for portable is the Bev 200 system, which is a tackle box with a 12-volt water pump. That's all you need. Cleaner than distilled water, very portable. Secondly, and of course if you have it in your home, you want the Bev 100 or 300. You want one 30 caliber rifle, 500 rounds of ammunition for each individual, or shotgun for closer 150 yards personal defense. I've also ordered specialty ammo for my shotgun, which includes armor-piercing. You can have the flame-throwing shots. You can have balls. You can even have these little balls that have a wire between them. It can literally, these are devastating kind of weapons.
Oh, they are. They are. There's the flechette rounds that have the steel flechettes from Vietnam in them.
Right. Well, I have all those kind of fancy rounds. So, in other words, don't come let's say, visiting Dr. Deagle expecting to do violence to me or my family without going to meet your maker. It'll be a bad idea. Then you mentioned cast iron pots and skillets. You can buy those from. You've got a couple recommendations on your website, thelibertyman.com. A truck. And in the past we talked about the Pantone generator. I'm not so convinced that it's easy to get those plans or to figure it out. The most important thing is to get a diesel truck or a biodiesel truck that can carry weight. Heavy canvas tents. You have on your website the all-terrain foldable kind of special forces bicycles. Food we have our
bicycle.
Yeah, right now we have, for example, we have the Preparewise, and they make the best foods. They're actually in Mylar bags and packets. We recommend that people get 5-gallon kind of water jugs, which are the most portable, and they can get those from the Ready store. Those are available. You recommend 900 grams of grain per person. I recommend amaranth, spelt, millet, etc. And you can use dry ice to pack those in your containers.
Let it get up before you seal it up, otherwise your container will explode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, heavy liver top boots. You mentioned I like Cabelis is very good. The workshop stores, you can go to Amazon. You want to have also over glasses to protect your eyes and eyewear. Vacuum protected heritage seeds, and those are great places. You can get those around. Those are very important. And a copy of Dare to Prepare by Holly Deo. I also recommend the CERT manual for emergencies, for basic life support and trauma. Get involved with your local fire department. The Paratrooper bicycle is at thelibertyman.com. You have a number of other items that are available. Tell some of the items that are present.
Well, one of the handy things is the crank-up radio flashlight. It picks up AM, FM, and all the weather bands. You can have it as a flashlight, and you can also to recharge your cell phone. These things have become very compact and very inexpensive. Very handy thing to have around.
Right.
I offer some publications that are difficult to find, such as a Special Forces Operations Manual and a survival guide that is one of the best ones I've ever seen, 6 ways in, 12 ways out.
So those are all available on your website. That's
all
really
available on
excellent.
my website. And the Faraday bags. These are high-tech bags. They have 4 layers, including a very thin aluminum sheet that protects electronic equipment from EMP attack. That's a new item at my website.
Oh, that's really good. That's especially important because most people don't realize, even if they're not plugged in or turned on.
Dr. Bill, I'll get some of these in the mail to you probably tomorrow or Monday.
That's great. Also the radiation detectors, we now have our new links up to the Less EMF. That's the best place to get your radiation detector, the Inspector EXP and the Inspector Plus. They also have the software. I have the software cables. You can attach it to your laptop and record it. And if you want to record it and actually post it even on a website, I recommend our radiation first line of defense kit and our biological weapons first line of defense kit. These are really important to have both. You should have a greenhouse or the ability to build one. You can go to Sam's Club, Home Depot, or if you just get those tubes, we call a tube one with 100 mil poly or deck screws and plywood. But you have to be prepared for the fact we could have radioactive rain or air, and you may need to filter your water and protect it from the regular ambient rain without filtering it. I recommend a Generac 20 kilowatt generator. Probably we're going to look at lithium pyrophosphate batteries, a power controller where you can add solar panels. You want to be able to be off the grid. The current power systems are designed basically to be stuck and connected to the grid. 99% of the people that buy solar are connected. Wind generation is okay if you have enough power. Wind, it's very spotty. If you're in certain places, you want to have a test done before you put one in, and it should be kind of a backup because you'll find it's good to kind of it's a good backup, and it works at times when everything else is down, like in the middle of the night. The main thing is you got to have batteries that can charge up. Well, water, I tell people, get a roof water recovery system. It's law in Australia. I just put one recently up on my roof I have a 2,500 gallon tank for my fruit trees in my garden and greenhouse in the front, and a 500 gallon for my house and pool. Those will recover off your roof, and very, very good system to have. And then I'm also going to plan on putting in a well. Group defenses, you want to look at the castle defense system. It's important to also think about KT ordinances in terms of some other things you can get for projectiles. You can go online and look for advanced gunshot types of things. I like Quantico, Quantico.com. You can actually, there's a number of stores across the country. Personal defense, one of the things after this horror that happened in Aurora, people that use guns correctly and store them correctly don't hurt or harm people.
No, they don't. It's a shame there was not a concealed carry individual in that theater that could have took that guy down.
Yeah, if there was a concealed carry person, what would happen is he would have started popping off, and they would just simply pull a gun and not give him a lethal shot, give him maybe a shot with a stun gun, but give him a shot in the leg or arm, and then dropped him down, and everybody would jump him and pin him.
I'm sorry to disagree with you, Dr. Bill. You aim, set, or a mash. In Hollywood, you can hit arms and legs, but in real life...
Yeah, I'm talking about if you're right beside. Yeah, exactly. Well,
right.
I stand corrected, and you're the expert on this. Solar oven, I think, is a very good idea to have for cooking. We also mentioned the not top items to buy for security. Believe it or not, store at least 3 weeks of water, which is 5-gallon jugs, which you can get. You want to have enough water so you can have 5 gallons per person per day. That's a lot of water.
It is a lot of water. It adds up quick.
Yeah, pasta and ramen noodles, rice, canned soups, meats, veggies, fruit, popcorn, salt, spices, milk, cereal, beef jerky, grains, cooking oil. Very important. We have the coconut oil, coconut pure at our Nutrimeds line, canned nuts, dehydrated foods, and freeze-dried foods. That's our Preparewise.com. Dried fruits, honey, cane sugar, baking essentials, dehydrated fruit juice powders, almonds, and peanut butter, salsa, baby food, pet food, and make sure you have enough for your pets for long-term storage. Those are the 25 items that are going to disappear off the shelves quicker than you can imagine, and they're all posted there.
That's right. They'll be gone in minutes.
Those will be gone in minutes. If you don't have them prepared, we're going to revise this list because we've done some updates since then. Any other suggestions you can tell people to do? I tell them, get out of the big cities. If you're living in a big city in America or any other country, live on the periphery in an area where you can get away, if you have to quickly, to your tertiary site.
Dr. Bill, this is the Liberty Man signing out.
Thanks a lot again. John is on.
You're welcome. Have a great
7 to 9 a.m. Monday to Friday, Central Standard Time. His show next Wednesday will be a blockbuster. You don't want to miss it. And we'll come back. We're going to talk to Robert Felix and Ann Morrison.
Alrighty then. I guess we're waiting for this commercial break to end, and we'll get into more of the earth changes. So hang in there. I just hate to try to edit all this out. Yes, stand by. We're on commercial break right now. Alrighty. The show is not over. We're just on commercial break. And there's no real new news, so I'm not going to repeat the old news. Max, stop, Max, Max. Stop. Thank you.
System uses for.
Yeah, still a commercial.
For over a decade,
We're back.
The GCN Radio Network.
With Ann Morrison and Robert Felix. Robert, tell us about the latest of what's going on with the earthquakes, volcanoes, and ice age changes, because extreme weather is present. We have drought everywhere, and then in other places it's extremely cold, the coldest summer in history in Alaska and in Scotland. Other places are drying right out, and their crops are failing everywhere. In fact, one of the early signs of a transition to an ice age is famine. The crop failure, hot spots, probably caused by the cutting off of the loop current from the Macondo drilling 2 years ago by British Petroleum at the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, volcanism, increased rainfall, is the sine qua non of ice ages. Ice ages are started with increasing volcanism, which is what we're seeing, under oceanic volcanism primarily.
Absolutely. We're seeing it all. You know, one of the things that I had to put on my website this week on iceagenow.info, Scotland misses its greenhouse gas reduction targets due to one of the coldest winters on record. I just love it. I mean, but you know, they're not being funny. The article it talks about the government failing to meet those targets, and they're really all of the various ministers, the climate change minister. Yep. They have
minister. I like that. That's a really good term, because it is a cult. It is a cult. Yeah.
But anyway, they have it, and they say that exceptionally cold weather was to blame, and that people had to heat their homes in order to keep warm and safe. And yet they're still wringing their hands that thinking that this global warming, it's unreal.
Well, similar to the foolishness about chlorofluorocarbons, and I have a report I think I posted last week called "You Can't Float a Brick in Your Pool." The fact is, chlorofluorocarbons are so heavy they cannot float to the upper atmosphere. What can get up there, though, is hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, which come from volcanoes, and from pollution from high sulfur coal burnt in China and elsewhere, as well as under oceanic volcanism that can vent and then literally rise up to the upper atmosphere, plus the interaction with xenon-133 and radioiodine-131 that could chew up the ozone layer. These are real dangers. Chlorofluorocarbons don't do anything to the upper atmosphere. It's zero. Has no effect whatsoever. The fact is, we have people that are pseudoscientists, or people that basically are in a position because they have a PhD or a position in academia, but they aren't bright. They aren't able to think of multiple things at once, or they throw out one anomaly and they make a model based on things that are incomplete. The fact is that we know that the glaciers around the world, 80% are increasing, 10% are staying the same, or 10 are decreasing. The overall world temperature is not rising in the last decade. There was a temporary rise in the 90s. That's reversed. What's going on is our hot periods right now, our extreme weather, is destroying crops, but the overall world temperature is dropping.
Well, when you talk about the chlorofluorocarbons being heavier, it reminds me of the coal mines. 80 years ago, 100 years ago, they kept canaries down there below ground in the coal mines,
right,
so that they could. We've all heard of that. So that the canary would die first before the miners did. Right. One of the things that the canaries could check was CO2, because the mines would get inundated with CO2. It turns out that CO2 is heavier than air.
Right.
So how in the world is that supposed to be up there in the sky creating global warming?
It doesn't. It's CO2. Sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide are lighter, but not CO2. CO2 is too heavy.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you also mentioned that glaciers are growing instead of melting. There's a study that just came out this week. It turns out, now this one's crazy, it turns out that only a few hundred of the roughly 200,000 glaciers worldwide have been monitored for a decade or more. Only a few hundred out of 200,000. And the scientists have been monitoring the ones that are at low elevations. Well, now a team of French glaciologists, they've confirmed that the glaciers between northern Pakistan and western China, they're in the Karakoram range, on average have not only remained stable, but have even grown in recent years.
Now, by the way,
this is crazy. They're telling us that they told us 5 years ago that the glaciers in the Himalayas would be gone by 2035. Now we find out that they're growing, and it was based all on guesswork. It was based on inference. They admit it. It's based on inference. It's based on interpolation, but not based on actual measurement.
Now, you mentioned something here in one of the top articles, and I looked at it and say, "Oh my gosh!" I'm here literally, and my eyes are popping out of my head. It's about this experiment that they're doing live without the cooperation of the people of the population, I'm sure, where they actually sprayed sun-reflecting chemicals, sulfate aerosols over New Mexico to see if they could reproduce the effect that volcanoes do in cooling the globe. This geoengineering is really crazy. It's the same way as people talk about what's in the geoengineering and the, quote, chemtrails. The chemtrails are real. They're not imaginary. I took care of pilots flying out of Peterson and Buckley Air Force Base, and because they had classified clearance, I found out exactly what they're doing, and they told me. In fact, I had Dr. Isley, the head of the World Constitution Parliament Association, give me the actual Constitution and Federation documents for the 193 nations that signed the NGO World Federation Agreement, and they plan on geoengineering the oceans with iron sulfates and engineering the upper atmosphere with thorium, strontium, and aluminum nanoparticles, as well as these sulfate aerosols, in order to change the albedo, the reflectance of the upper atmosphere, to, quote, change the atmosphere of the Earth. This is craziness. This is craziness. But these crazies, by the way, he was a physicist who ran the Vitamin cottages. They founded in 1958. These people basically are on a messianic mission. They're incomplete and scientists that are basically have a narcissistic idea that they know when everybody else is stupid, and that they're going to be the preservers of civilization. In fact, they're going to try to crash whatever changes are occurring as we transition from one age or aeon to another, to an ice age. And the climate shift now, they're going to amplify the problem. In fact, they calculated out that the amount of rainfall decreased by geoengineering the atmosphere would cause a reduction in rainfall over North America up to 20%. Now, already we know what's happening in the Midwest now. The corn crop is dropped. The soybean crop is killed. What's happening is these commodities are going through the ceiling. This kind of policy, by the way, is a form of ecocide. I call murder. Mass murder, because even the people in Iran are trying to blame HARP in America on their crashed crops. Well, it's partly due to the climate change as we head into an ice age. It's partly due to geoengineering, and it's partly due to the fact we had allowed British Petroleum to drill at the Macondo site and disconnect the loop current, so it's now super hot there, and the pacemaker for world climate, according to NOAA and the Frascati Institute and Dr. Zangari, is now gone. We don't have a pacemaker for world climate, so it's all over the map. Hot, cold, dry, floods one place, so dry the crops are dying. This is what's going on.
This is what happens as we head into ice ages. You know, there's a study by H.H. Lamb. He was probably the world's greatest climatologist. He was out of the United Kingdom, and he was so good. He's the guy that actually founded the CRU unit at Fruit Hadley. He wrote several books on the Little Ice Age, and one of the things he said, just what you're saying, he said that as we entered the last little ice age, there were areas of the world that had the biggest drought in 300 years.
Right.
Then later that year, same area, same year, they had the snowiest winter in 500 years.
Right.
That is one of the marks of going into a little ice age, is extremes in both directions.
Right. We know that the area of the Chillicothe Valley in southern Alaska has the highest snowfall on Earth, and the usual snowfall is over 900 inches per year. The levels are now hitting new targets. The coldest summer in history in Alaska, the rainiest areas in the British Isles and ever, which is why the crops everywhere are failing because of either too much rain, too little rain, and too much heat. And now we've got UV shock. To kind of fill us into more of that, we have Ann Morrison talking about what's going on with UV light and with other issues, because if you're not prepared, if you don't realize that the midday sun is toxic, as they say in the Transvaal of South Africa, toxic sun, don't go out. Back in a moment.
Oh, he'll be back in a moment. We have another commercial break. I can't open any other windows that might interrupt what we're listening to. So just keep doing what you're doing. Clean up your house. Check your email while you're listening. Whatever it takes so you're not bored. Or get some exercise and don't stare at the computer screen. Alrighty then. Hopefully you are getting stuff done. I'm just talking so there's no dead air. I mean, I could maybe flash pictures on the screen, but I'll figure something else for you guys another time. Takes about 4 hours to get the information you want, so I don't want to miss it while it's on this loop. What's going on over there? Cat, you leave the other cat alone. Oh, goodness. Come here, big boy. Big boy, come here. You leave Rhodey alone. Don't bother her. Oh, not back yet. We're checking on it. This takes a long time. Sometimes I can edit it out, but nope, not this time. We're running too slow.
Price for
Yeah, not yet. My goodness. Uh-oh. Big boy, get over here. Where are you? Almost. Hang in there, people.
And helps with weight loss.
Okay, looks like it's freezing up. We'll take that one off.
For MDS Forte.
Wow.
Welcome back, and yeah, a lot of things going on here. A lot of times people get overwhelmed. I tell people, get started with simple things. I'm still in the process of just going back over my lists and updating things and just doing what I have to do. The first thing I tell people, if you're in a big city, get out now. Move out to the outskirts, even if it's 4 or 5 miles away, out to a place where, at least if you have to go to the country, you're on the edge of the city. Number 2, get your basics of this list, the 10 plus 10 plus 10 list done, and start doing it now. And just even if the very first thing you do is store water, food, you need to be prepared. It's better to be prepared now for anything. Just a power outage, a national security alert. Maybe the banks are down because it had a bank holiday, and that can be as simple as 5 days. 5 days without any bank cards, without anybody able to purchase gasoline. And remember, the first thing that the government will do in case of whether it's a biological attack, an avian flu, or a state of war, or just a bank holiday, is they're going to shut off the power grid. Bye power grid. No more power pumping your gasoline to your tanks. No more trucks carrying food to your grocery stores. They're going to shut off the power grid, and your food's going to rot in your refrigerator. And if you have solar panels that are linked to the grid, bye refrigerator, and all your food will melt and rot. Now, you need to be aware that the government wants you to be dependent on them, so they can then make sure that you have to come to them for food and water, or if you've got bullets, you'll exchange bullets for bread. People don't know that. They say, oh, America's armed with so many bullets. The government will say, we'll collect all those when we finally declare a state of emergency, and they don't even need very long. 4 to 6 weeks of basically your food rotting in the first 10 hours, and you'll beg to them to give you bread for your bullets. So if you don't have electricity, if you don't have food and water stored, your hunkering down planes will be gone. And you, by the way, can only go 1 tank of gas unless you've got some kind of vehicle storing fuel. You can go further, like biofuel and with a diesel engine. So you got to think these things through. And, I tell people, live today and enjoy it. Like I'm going to live where I am in Southern California. Take my radiation protection. I'm not freaked out by Fukushima. Do take action. I'm contacting the Senator Wyden and Senator Feinstein's experts. Do file, and I'm waiting for a final response to get my lecture set up for the Academy this October 3rd to 7th in St. Petersburg, Florida. But whatever you can't do, just live with it. But plan. Being a realist. A lot of people, what do you say, and when people ask you what they should do? Because a lot of people are going to freak out. They're going to figure, well, I'm just going to get in the truck and just take off. That's not wise, is it?
Well, what people tell me is they're going to come over and take what I have. Well,
it'll be a bad day for them. I'm armed to the teeth in a crack shot, and I'm getting more and more weapons all the time, plus I'm developing exotic ones. And at some point, I'm going to let my plans for exotic weapons get out, which are far more dangerous than guns. And God help the power that be that wants to take over a citizenry that's armed with these kind of weapons. They're not going to do very well. And we don't want to kill people, but we want to make certain that they know that we are not to be tangled with. We're not Britons or Australians or anybody that's going to lay down their guns. This is going to be a fight to the death, and they need to understand that we're much more clever than they can just bring in predator drones and other things and hit us. We have lots of ways of taking care of business. And we're clever, we're Americans, we're the offscoffing of the planet, and we have risen up because we were armed to the teeth against the British and the Redcoats, etc., and we're not going to be pushed around. Just not going to happen. So,
you were talking about one of the things you could do, but one of the things I recommend that people do is read that book 1 second after.
Oh, that's a really good book. Tell us about it, because I read it, and I can tell you the decisions that people make months and years before in that 1 second after disaster. Tell us about the summary of it.
Well, I don't know if I remember it too well, but I know that it talks about 1 second after an EMP attack, and I think the same thing could apply if we had to start fighting in the streets for food as we head into an ice age. But it talks about civilization essentially collapsing. And one of the things you hadn't mentioned that I think should be added to your survival list is your prescription drugs, because after an EMP attack, there's not going to be any electricity anywhere. And let's look at your prescription drugs.
Well, you know what I usually tell people to do before they get worry about prescription drugs is transition to lifestyle and nutrimeds. As a medical doctor, as an internist, I give recommendations for nutritional and wellness protocols, and I never give drugs. And I used to 20, 30 years ago give drugs every day. When people are saying prescription drugs, I say, get off the damn things, but it might take you 6 months to a year of changing your lifestyle, diet, and then getting transitioned to nutraceuticals, so you're not taking antidepressants, antihypertensives, diabetic control, and if you do, you have the minimum, and you're able to buy enough then, because remember, nutraceuticals are considerably cheaper than drugs, and you can't get drugs if the whole civilization crashes. Nutraceuticals you can get, you can even grow herbs if you had to, but I tell people, like having an herb garden, you can store nutraceuticals for years. Drugs may not last as long. That's what's also important. So
your drugs, the pills are going to be made in one place, and the bottles for them are going to be made in another place, and they're going to be trucked back and forth.
Well, they're usually transnational.
Going to be running.
Well, believe it or not, most of our current meds are made in 3 places: China, India, and Mexico. The powders are sent to America. They're put into capsules. The packaging is maybe made in Connecticut with French and English going to Montreal store or warehouse where it's shipped across Canada, and the English version may be shipped to San Francisco and to Colorado and to Chicago. People need to understand that what's going on is a very transnational thing, and so when you say, well, my drugs are made in America, no, they're not. They're probably made in India. They're probably made in Mexico, and then they're compressed into pills or capsules, and then the packaging and the printing is made in America, but the rest of it is all done outside of the U.S. country. And if civilization breaks down, transportation breaks down, the power grid,
exactly,
you're not just not going to get your drugs in 2 or 3 months. You're not going to get your drugs in 2 or 3 years.
That's right. They figure that people who need those drugs are going to be dead as soon as their prescription runs out.
Well, that's what's happening in Greece, where they've just the economic hazards of a country melting down. People are jumping off bridges because they can't afford their drugs. They can't afford to eat. They're basically destitute, and the nations don't have any alternative capital to even buy staples. And we've done an active war against Syria in Iran by basically choking off the supply of food for staples to 80 million Iranians and 25 million Syrians. This is not a smart thing to do. This is an active war, and we're asking for it, and we're going to be very sorry what's going to come next. And it's not just a one-sided, unilateral, we'll crush you America deal. The backwash can be very devastating, especially because we've ticked off Russia and China. So what do you think, Ann?
Well, I just think that he's moving his chemical weapons and his biological weapons so that he can transfer them either to Iran or to Russia.
Yeah. Now, the thing is that the Pptv 60, which is a Presidential Directive 60, was issued by President Clinton and issued over our missile forces, not to rely on a launch-on warning, that is to prepare for and absorb a nuclear first strike and retaliate afterward. That was never reversed, by the way. And what Obama's done is he's extended that whole policy and plan. We also need to realize what's going on in terms of we're currently basically an act of terrorism against the Bashir government. There was a decapitation attempt. It killed his brother-in-law, killed a number of the major war cabinet in Syria. I can assume in my mind, military kind of strategy in mind, that Syria now has got Iranian and Russian personnel coming in besides logistics support. That the S-400, the anti-aircraft system is there. Our Navy, by the way, that's parked in the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, is just asking for it. And if they're within 180 miles of any target areas, if the Iranians decide it's important to launch, or the Syrians decide to launch a hypersonic cruise missile, our ships won't even see it on radar before it hits them at 18,000 miles an hour. And they need to be aware of the fact that you're a sitting duck. Also, the Chinese have EMP weapons that can take out the daisy chains of of chips that run everything from the power generators to the communications to the steering of the ship to the engines. And we released this story 3 years ago on this program. The fact is, military personnel listen to this show, intelligence agencies do, and they ask three things. Number one, who's on Deagle's program? Why are they asking these questions, and how the hell do they know this? And the reason is we are out of the box. We're not under an agency. Nobody's saying, Deagle, don't say that. Okay, I haven't had any visits, by the way, by any government agency, but I guarantee you from my contacts inside government, they are listening, and I hope they are, because we're asking questions as good Americans to support America and also to support a stable world. A stable world requires a stable America that's a true republic. Obama's destroying it. Okay, he's destroying it with his policies and his attitude, and we need to rebuild America to what it was. You need to start off with the family and with you personally getting prepared, because if this, and be skeptical, if this event coming later in August, September is real, we're going to see major volcanic and earthquake events. We may well see a major CME strike the earth somewhere, sometime perhaps in the next 24, 36 months. But if not, it's a major disinformation op by the government to try to throw off track the so-called alternative media, because the regular media is just putting it to sleep. If you're not getting prepared for any disaster, whether it's a superstorm, an earthquake, a power station blackout, whatever, I'm not going to say God help you, because he sent his witnesses to tell you already, you better be prepared. Take care, have a great weekend, and thank you, team.
Well, that was the Dr. Deagle show, and enjoy it. I'll be uploading it a little later. Take care.